Hi everybody and welcome to this week's edition of Straight Talk, sponsored by Inglis and Darley. It's a special edition from Riverside Stables, looking ahead to the Inglis Easter Yearling Sale, which starts on Sunday. We have an extensive chat with Arrowfield's John Messara about Autumn Glow. I look forward to the Easter sale from John, as well as the state of the industry. We also talk to Inglis' Sebastian Hutch about his expectations for the sale. We also look at concerns with the New Zealand foal crop, new additions at New Haven and Newlong. In racing, how much is Guesthouse worth after his Golden Slipper win, the high cost of racing, Michael Costa heads back home, and how many golden tickets is too many. And in wagering, Tabcorp's home truth and 1,000 days of inaction. Tim, joining us as always, Tim Rowe, Bren O'Brien with you, of course, your host. We're here at Easter at the English Riverside. We're sitting here on the Thursday, sort of looking forward to the week. I mean, looking at the sort of the vibe and going and walking around and talking to people today, Tim, what's sort of your perception about what we can expect on Sunday and Monday, and what is like the best of the best, of the Australian bloodstock market?
I've only been here this morning as you actually, Bren, but look, it took us quite a while to get round, all the vendors and do a loop of the complex. It's a bit hard to tell with the wider what's happening in sort of global economy and different things, but one thing for sure, there's a lot of very nice horses here, and probably like, gold and all sorts of things. Quality sells and holds value, and I think that will hold true in the bloodstock market to a larger degree. Again, like we say, for every sale, I'm sure there'll be horses that are bought at under the odds or under what breeders thought they were worth, but I still think it'll be a very solid sale. Just depending, we'll know more come Monday night.
Yeah, I think looking at the fact that there's still probably a couple of players at the top end of the market that might not be here, but all the top end players will be here. So the top end of the market's always going to be pretty strong. In comment this morning is that blokes who count money in the billions aren't too worried about diesel prices, but there is some challenges in the market, and it's probably an interesting time. I guess what we have seen before, Tim, though, when there's sort of chaos in the outside world, this little world of the bloodstock can sort of tick on and do what it needs to do. And if you look at recent history, it'll tell you that it'd be a surprise to see things take a massive backward step, and things might be a little bit circumspect. They may not be. They may be more positive. Last year was extremely buoyant and probably exceeded expectations, and Inglis has certainly done a good job of really keeping the buzz about this sale, haven't they?
Definitely, and I would say those people are, again, across all business fields, those that really make money is probably when it's a downturn, and if there is a downturn, to see an opportunity. And the greatest example of that is Home Affairs, who sold the slipper winner, of course, on Saturday, was sold at the Easter sale in 2020 when COVID and there was a lot of uncertainty, and Coolmore and Tom Magner stepped up and really took advantage of that, and have got arguably the most valuable young stallion on the market.
Yeah, it was
on the roster. Anyway.
Yeah, we'll get to that racing bit at the moment, and but yeah, it was a remarkable, great day for Home Affairs, but also an absolute terrific day for Arrowfield, which pivots into our sort of feature interview, Tim. Yeah, I think if you counted the fact that Manhattan Rain was once a Arrowfield size, they had five. Sorry, you're right. Your 5 Group 1 winners of the day, because Schnitzel, of course, the Autumn Sun, and Castelvecchio. It's just a remarkable day for them. We had a chat with John Messara. We talked through the success of the day and a variety of other things, and we'll click onto that in a moment. But I mean, what did you take of most importance out of this upcoming discussion with John Messara, Tim?
Oh, first of all, on Autumn Glow, I've hard not to be a rap for her, and have been from sort of since I saw her as weanling actually. Just her progression and living up to the top billing that she commanded here at Easter a few years ago, and just that he's really excited about having a good horse, and Arrowfield's in a good place at the moment. Yeah, as John said, he's always a bit circumspect, but there's a lot to look forward to at Arrowfield, and just seeing where Autumn Glow can go.
And this is the conversation, it's quite a detailed, long conversation we had with John Messara today, Tim, about his expectations for Easter, about Autumn Glow, and about the state of the industry.
John, a great reflecting on last Saturday, tremendous day for Arrowfield, and particularly the Autumn Glow going to 11 from 11 in quite a phenomenal performance, really.
Yeah, rewarding day. An Autumn Glow once more showing us that we haven't seen the bottom of it yet. There's a fair bit more there than we haven't tested, according to the jockey.
There was a lot of debate which race you should go to next as an autumn grand final, and settle on the Queen Elizabeth. Is that sort of an entree to the precursor to the Cox Plate, perhaps?
Yeah, very much so. Look, even though the Queen Elizabeth is 400 metres longer than the longest distance she's raced so far, which is a mile, obviously, the feeling is that she'll get the ground, the distance. She relaxes so well during her races. And she finished off with a lot of verve the other day. And I know James is very strong on the fact that she'll see up 200, the 2,000 meters with no difficulty. And of course, our trainers are the same line. So we're going to take the chance and have a go.
Was it about the distance, or obviously she's our alibi is a very, very good filly in the Doncaster, trying to, I'm not going to say dodge her, but
No, we're not trying to dodge. She's an alibi. She is a good filly, but ours is, I think, proven to a sort of slightly greater extent that she's an alibi at this stage. But it was a question of where we want to head to in the future, and the boys felt, and I agreed ultimately, that we ought to test her over the 2,000 metres.
Autumn Glow's got such a public following now, 11 from 11, and if we think of the great mares of the last sort of 25 years of Winx and the Kylie Diva, Sunline and Black Caviar, of course. Do you fear defeat now more than anything? How do you handle those emotions?
Well, I wouldn't be human if I didn't. I do enjoy seeing that picket fence, as does the public, I think. But we're in horse racing and things can happen. And so you've got to be realistic and say that the time may come where she's going to be defeated. But at the moment, she's winning with such authority that it doesn't look to be imminent. Let's put it that way.
John, the importance of a good horse and what a good horse does for you, just in the way you feel. Like, you've been around this industry for a long time now. Yeah, you have every now and then you have a champion horse come through, and it just gets you excited, gets you pep. Have you sort of felt like that over the last sort of 12 months? You're like, it's just really good to have a really good one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been very buoying to have one as good as that, because it might be the best one we've ever had. We've had some very good horses along the way. Even David Hayes rang me from Hong Kong the other day to congratulate us on the win of the filly, the mare on the weekend. And he said, I suppose she's going to take the place of Miss Finland now, is she? I said, I'll never forget the fact that Miss Finland won the Golden Slipper in April and the VRC Oaks in November of the same year. That is something that very few could do, but this mare does look very special. We haven't seen how far this mare can go and what she can do yet, because she's only done what she's had to do.
Yeah.
She hasn't had to be extended,
Yeah.
Look, maybe getting too far at ourselves, but up post the spring, and maybe she's a Cox Plate winner, but I believe it may be a milestone year for you next year. Do you take her overseas and try and take on Europe?
Yeah, I'd like to do that. Even might consider the US Breeders' Cup if we feel that she'd be competitive there. Yeah, definitely. Once we were to get through and then run in the Cox Plate and win the Cox Plate, which is next year run at Flemington anyway, which is probably makes it a little bit easier because it's an easier track to get acquainted to. Well, let's say she were to do that. Any future racing would just be repetitive, really. You'd be going through the same weight road races you've already run. And I think giving her another challenge, if she's well and healthy and up to it, I think we would get a big buzz out of that in what's an important year for us.
US style of racing is a little bit different. You think she could cope with that?
Have to do a lot more research on it, but there are those over there that think it would. On the other hand, I feel more at home at Ascot, for example, during the Royal Ascot meeting. I've been there a few times, and we haven't succeeded there yet, and she might be one that can give us a bit of success there before we go to the next place.
Obviously, a massive reward for the side. Obviously, had 2 Group 1 winners in the weekend. I mean, it must be great when a champion horse gets a champion horse. It must be a great feeling that they can reproduce that ability. When you put a horse to start, that's what you want to see, isn't it?
Very much so, and very rewarding. And I remember when I rang the Hermitage, our partners Hermitage, and said, "Look, I've seen an exceptional looking filly. Do you want to be in with us?" I said, first thing is, I think she'll be very good. But second thing is that we want to protect her and give her every chance because it would be very valuable for the stallion. And that was prophetic, as it turned out, because she has promulgated the stallion into the limelight now. Not the only one to do that. There's the other very good colt as well, the fillies that won Oaks and what have you. But certainly this filly is so exceptional that she's done that job for us.
Have you made any inquiries about Autumn Boy for, with Glenn Ritchie and?
No, I haven't. It's early in Autumn Sun's career, and others will emerge. Plenty of colts, I think, will emerge over time. So he's a very good colt, an excellent colt. But I haven't made any approaches or inquiries at this point.
We're only in March of the year, but as things stand at the moment, he first and second on this stallion table. The Autumn Sun could be winning a champion sire title if it wasn't for Snitzel, who is just having such the most remarkable year. I mean, it must be, obviously, it's difficult to have lost a stallion of his standing, but for him to do what he's doing now and still have that legacy, it must be also gratifying as well.
Very gratifying. I'd be surprised if there's a horse of that age that has found himself at the top of the standings, seriously. Yeah. Now, there is a situation developing, may not get there, where she wins the QE2, he wins the Doncaster, and we're on level pegging for the rest of the season. I still think the other horse would probably win because he's got so many more runners than Autumn Sun has. We've got a fraction of the runners the other guy has. So, nevertheless, it might make it interesting.
Yeah.
If we can deliver those other two races.
We're speaking ahead of the Easter sale here, John, at your marquee. How are you? Obviously, Arrowfield always brings a strong draft to Easter. How are you feeling heading into Sunday and Monday? There's a lot going on globally outside racing at the moment.
People regard me as always being pessimistic before a sale, and I guess it's just caution really on my part. I am a bit pessimistic this time again because I know, for example, that one or two potentially large customers have cancelled their trips out here. That doesn't mean that they won't necessarily buy anything, but they won't be here to get the excitement and feel the excitement and probably have a proper go. So I think it will be less than it could have been if we hadn't had the Middle East conflict.
Yeah.
So I'm slightly nervous, although my staff tell me that X-rays and numbers of looks, etc., are pretty reasonable for this time of the cycle.
It's a substantial draft, massive draft we've got, but also it's a big offering. It's it must be obviously there was a bit of a trepidation in it because it's a really key part of your business that you do well here and that you get the what you can. I mean, there's things you can control and things you can't control, but in terms of the quality you've bought here and where things sit and the pedigrees and all those types of things, do you feel like Arrowfield's done everything it can to sort of make it a success?
We have. We had a very good sale at Magic's and we topped the totals, consolidated number. So we did the same thing at Classics, and I'm hoping that we'll do it here. We certainly have the numbers to do it, which will put us at the top of the tree in 3 sales, which I don't think we've ever had before. So that might be something new. We have brought a very good draft of horses, and there's especially very good draft of fillies here. I've gone around and looked at 30 or 40 other fillies around the place, and I'm satisfied that our fillies are super competitive. So, look, I mean, I'm hoping it reaches our expectations, but I am nervous about people cancelling their trips in the current circumstances, and therefore not having the level of intent that they might have otherwise had if they'd come to the sale.
Whether you want to comment or I'm not sure, but racing politics is never far away. There's a lot going on in Australia, New South Wales, as we know, New Zealand as well. Yeah. How do you see the state of play of racing at the moment?
There's a lot of discord at the moment, which is unfortunate because we're not a massive industry, but we're a reasonably big industry. It's got to be sorted out. There's got to be a meeting of the minds and good consultation between the various groups to get back on the same page. I am concerned about it because the industry needs all the support and help and consistency that it can have. And there is a lot of discord, a number of court actions and similar. And we've got to find a way through all that. And I just hope that, wise heads can get together and sort it out.
Is part of that, John, that there's danger, the success that we've had in this industry over probably the last 15, 20 years in terms of prize money, in terms of the breeding bloodstock industry, all that sort of stuff could be like squandered or taken for granted if we don't capitalise on that. If you're not going forward and not building on things, not working together, there's an opportunity lost there, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, certainly the cumulative prize money is better than it's ever been. The distribution of that prize money, I think, has left a few gaps in that it's sort of unrealistic to look at averages.
Yeah.
I think looking at medians is a better statistic. And while the regulators have done a great job increasing the revenue base, no question, inflation has overtaken racing like it's overtaken other parts of the economy. And costs of racing and costs of breeding have made it, pretty uneconomic. On my calculations, only 10% of horses that race in New South Wales break even. That's not a good enough stat, So we need to find ways and means to make it more sustainable. And that might mean some tinkering with distribution and finding other ways of supporting trainers and owners on costs, because I think people will drop out, and you can see it through the reducing size of the foal crop. This is not only New South Wales, it's also other states, and it's New Zealand. We're all suffering from the same symptoms.
The following segment is brought to you by Inglis. Group 1 winner Benedetta, the most accomplished mare to be offered a public auction in Southern Hemisphere this year, will be the star attraction at this year's Inglis Chairman Sale. The supremely talented Benedetta has been a racetrack force ever since she debuted as a 3-year-old. She would join the likes of Triple Group 1 winner Provence, millionaire mares Arabian Summer and Generosity, stakes-winning 2-year-old Kiki Express, who's in folder Extreme Choice, and many others to be offered at the Chairman Sale in May. She'll be offered as a racing and breeding prospect and Widden's draft at the Chairman Sale. Supplementary entries for the sale will be taken until Friday, April 24th. To enter, go to inglis.com.au. Tim, we had also a good chat with Sebastian Hutch about where the sale sits at the moment, and here's what Sebastian had to say about his expectations for the week ahead. Joining us now on Straight Talk is Sebastian Hutch, Inglis Bloodstock CEO. Sebastian, obviously there's always a sense of expectation about Easter. Absolutely best of the best quality horses, all that type of stuff. Where do your expectations sit ahead of this sale in terms of, the amount of the people that are here? Have you got everyone you want here? Have you got, you've got them, clearly you've got the best of the best, pedigrees and horses and all that type of stuff. But in terms of the actual buying bench, the ones you've got here, have you got everyone that you would like to have here?
Look, I anxious in advance of the sale, more so than what I would be in advance of a normal sale. With great opportunity comes great expectation, and we've been given a really fantastic opportunity by our vendors. There's some lovely horses here, just in terms of general profile, physique, pedigree. It's just general timing and profile. It seems like the catalogue has lined up well. And obviously we're working feverishly to try and ensure that we can facilitate a market that satisfies those vendors. And I suppose it ultimately has them happy, but fundamentally satisfies them. But that's a challenging thing to do, particularly in the current circumstances with all that's going on in the world. People are inclined to want to be dismissive of it and say, oh, it's Easter. And, people who participate at Easter are immune from those factors, etc. That's a load of rubbish, obviously there's a percentage of people for whom it's less of a concern than others, but, we sell a huge amount of horses at this sale to people that buy horses at every other sale. It's not an entirely unique buying bench that participates at this sale, and those people are affected by what goes on. I suppose what we're hoping is people recognise the opportunity that the quality of stock here presents. There may be circumstances that are challenging now, but the investment decisions that people make over the course of this sale have the capacity to shape their business long term. There will be champions come out of this catalogue. It's just a case of trying to identify the ones that you feel will be those top class horses. And if you make the appropriate decisions at this juncture, we're talking about people starting to reap dividends from those decisions as soon as next October, into next year's 2-year-old season, 3-year-old season, 4-year-old season. Only a lot of good races by horses that are here at the moment. And, we just want people to be very cognizant of that. I've answered that in a very long-winded way, but
wouldn't expect anything else, Sebastian.
Righto.
We did speak to John Messara earlier, and he suggested, by his own admission, he's more pessimistic than most people, just that's his personality. But he did say there's some prominent buyers that have cancelled their trips, whether that's because of the conflict or other reasons. But is there a few buyers that have sort of potentially pulled out at the last minute?
The auction house will never have enough buyers at a sale. You never say we have too many or enough. There are people who, for a variety of different reasons, aren't going to appear that we would have liked to have appeared. But at this stage, I'm not anticipating those factors to have a significant bearing on the outcome of the sale, personally, based on what I know. I mean, I could be feeling differently by Sunday evening, Monday evening, but I'm not of the view that that's going to be a major factor at this stage. I'm more inclined, I want to try and have people who we know are engaged in the sale, and we know there are lots of people engaged with the sale, just cognizant of the opportunities that the catalogue presents right through it. I mean, it's not about just trying to identify the top 10 or 20 horses in the sale, but trying to identify good horses right the way through the catalogue, because there are good horses right the way through the catalogue.
The vibe in the aftermath of last year's sale was quite extraordinary. There's a real sense of buoyancy about it. It probably exceeded your expectations. Exceeded probably the market's expectations. But I mean, how do you recapture that? I mean, do you have to sit there and go, that was an amazing result, things worked really well? You obviously try to learn from that, but how do you then try to, I guess, capture the momentum for something that happened effectively 12 months ago, but did actually probably surprise the market?
I've intentionally avoided using that word all year. I've just purposely not used the word vibe all year. But anyway, so I'm not going to use it now. But look, I think, there was genuine momentum that came out of the sale last year. I think that's reflected in the horses that are here.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, I think that's where, to this point, the sale has benefited from the success of last year's sale. People have supported us with lots of nice horses. We had a surplus of demand for places in the sale. As things stand at the moment, we're going to offer 35 more horses than last year, just factoring in scratchings.
Yeah.
I mean, typically there'll be a few more scratchings between now and sale days. And if you said to me at the end of the sale last year, were we in a position to readily absorb 30 more horses in the catalogue of the appropriate standard, I would say absolutely. I mean, we'd set out with the objective of cataloguing 450 and offering, around 400, 410, and we've catalogued 471 and we'll probably offer 420, right? So it's going to work out nicely. We got there almost by accident, but we've landed in the spot that we want to land in. And I think people have known for the year, or certainly I've attended most sales, and, vendors talk and buyers ask questions. I think from a long way out, there's been an awareness amongst the buying bench that there are going to be a lot of nice horses here. And I think there are plenty of people who've tailored their business to be cognizant of that. Now, that's a risky thing to do, but I think based on what I've seen over the last 3-4 days, I think people will be very pleased by what horses are here, and hopefully ultimately they'll be able to buy the horses they like.
Richard Friedman last week commented on the story that we wrote regarding Adelaide and Barry Bowditch's comments about the condensed nature of the sales season, that it is impacting trainers' ability to sell down those horses, even if it is only 2 or 3 weeks. It gives that breathing space to sell down. Do you see that as a possible issue at Easter, or is it, again, a different market?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, despite, again, some sort of misguided perception that, the people who operated the sale breathe different air, it's just not the case. I mean, you'll see the same people here. You saw Classic, Premier, Magic Millions on the Gold Coast. I mean, lots of the same people. So, yeah, it is a factor. To some extent, I don't want to say it's beyond our control. It's at our discretion where we place the sale in the calendar. But certainly I was very inclined to want to avoid the Easter weekend. I know it's a ridiculous thing to say it's the Easter Yearling Sale, but just very conscious of trying to schedule a sale at a time when it's convenient for the most number of people to attend. We clash with the Dubai World Cup. We'd rather not clash with that. We'd love to be back in the slot that dovetails in with the championships. It was a concept that was born out of a collaborative effort, but we just haven't landed there. Magic Millions was a week later this year. We're a week earlier. I know the vendors were concerned about it last winter when it was first raised as a possibility, but there's no evidence of it being a concern in the presentation of the horses. And look, we'll be doing our best to try and engage as many people as we can. And it's not going to work for everybody, but I'm hopeful that we can. I'm hopeful that we can facilitate and we can generate enough interest and enough engagement in the sale that allow for a good, healthy market that people are pleased with.
So just off the back of that, Tim, sort of rounding out the, I guess, breeding and bloodstock chat, the article you had during the week about the foal crop in New Zealand, some concerns there about some dropping numbers. Sort of take us through that article. And I guess, there is some concern around this. And we sounded out a few people around the complex here today around the concerns around New Zealand and the dropping foal crop. It's something that, clearly, the industry feels needs to be addressed.
Well, it's not a new issue. So Australia's feeling the same effects, but given New Zealand's so much smaller, when if you drop 10%, it's far more significant than 10% on 12,000 than what it is on 3,000, and that's what they're predicting. Was 2,700 foals, and they've got $130 million export market. So a lot of I think it's by the time the end of their 3-year-old year, it's about 38%. Maybe 35%, I think, of horses are exported, and then another 8% on top of that. So they do lose a big proportion of their foal crop overseas, and that keeps the whole thoroughbred economy going over there. But to sustain race fields, New Zealand thoroughbred breeders and Lachlan Fitt from Evergreen Advisory have put together some data and information suggesting that New Zealand actually needs to breed another 500 foals a year, which, if you work that out, that's probably another 800 mares, 700 or 800 mares being bred a year, which is a huge number on a small broodmare population. So they've got some ideas around initiatives to turn that around, but it's not a simple fix. It is a small population New Zealand's got, and having them, it's, as we know, the cost of production is enormous now. So there needs to be some probably longer term thinking across all sectors or stakeholders in the New Zealand industry to try and at least hold the number and possibly grow it. You're not going to grow 500 foals, in 1 or 2 years. It's a longer term project to try and turn that around.
Yeah, and it mirrors some of the challenges in Australia, as you mentioned. So it's not just far from just a New Zealand problem, but it is an ongoing issue. Speaking of the breeding industry, we had a couple of new announcements. Young sires retiring, both 2-year-old Group 1 winners from last year, actually. Vinrock of Inglis sires winners now headed to Yulong at $22,000. And Cool Archie's also been retired to stud at New Haven Park, where I've seen, I think, $16,500, wasn't it? $10,000, $15,000 GST. Both young prospects. Yeah, I'd be interested to see how they go. It'd be a little bit, launching new stallions in this market can be a little bit tricky, and it'd be interesting to see how they go in terms of getting there. The Vinrock price was probably a little bit below. We had a quick chat with Sam Fairgrave today, just had a chat about the pricing model with them, and they sort of felt like they had to meet the market a little bit. Be interesting to see if that's reflected across the board in terms of stallion fees, Tim.
Well, Yulong, of course, got the broodmare population, Mr. Zhang, to be able to support a young stallion. So they're going to get as good a start as any stallion in the country just because of the depth and number of mares that Yulong have got. But still, to price him at sort of 20,000 plus GST gives those outside breeders a chance to hopefully have a win because, again, as even Sam said, production costs sort of 60 to 70,000 a year, or by the time you get the mare bred and the yearling to a yearling sale. So basically you've got to be 100,000 break even. It's a lot of money. It's very hard to sell a yearling for that amount. So it just, gives breeders a chance. And same with Cool Archie, a very good, his career cut short by injury. You probably call New Haven little Waikato now. They've just got Savabeel. But if, Arrowfield's done it with Redout's Choice and Danehill and that line. So if it works, it works. And Cool as a bill started well. Moanga's, I'm a big rap for that horse. And Cool Archie had the talent. So, I'm sure New Haven and the shareholders will get behind him.
The following segment is brought to you by Darley. Quick one before we move on. Just a bit of advice heading into Inglis Easter. Buy responsibly. And I actually mean it. Just have a look at what Darley Stallions are doing on track this season. They've sired 1 in 5 Group 1 winners. They've sired 1 in 6 stakes winners. And when you get to the sale, 1 in 9 yearlings in the Easter catalogue are by a Darley Stallion. So you're seeing it at the very top, you're seeing it week in, week out, and you're seeing it right there in the book. When you're going through the catalogue, it's not a bad place to start. Takes a bit of guesswork out of it, doesn't it? Buy responsibly, buy Darley. Right, Tim, on to we'll talk about racing, and what we're going to probably go back a bit of a bloodstock space here, but Guest House, obviously a very impressive winner, the Golden Slipper. Look, there's been a little bit of a question about the strength of this 2-year-old crop, but he was a pretty dominant winner. I think 1 by 1.5 lengths. Got the luck go his way, but Zach Lloyd was courageous enough to take the breaks, and also the horse was good enough to sort of surge away. Highly likely we'll see a deal done probably in the next couple of weeks on this Golden Slipper winner in terms of where he's going for stud. I mean, what value does it put on him, do you think?
Well, I sort of wrote earlier in the week, it's interesting how you structure a deal like this up. Given he's already won the biggest one that, if you bought him pre the slipper, there might have been a $20 million kicker. So I'm saying, look, he's got to be worth probably $25 million. And then it's just if there's a bit of competition, as my story says, I see Coolmore and Newlong. I think maybe before the slipper, Newgate sort of had a sniff around. But, when you're talking $25 million and more, it's a lot of money. And whether, presumably he races on at 3, well, he will race on at 3, that he, whether you have a $5 million kicker if he wins the Coolmore or, and $1 million or $2 million, and the Golden Rose, and, you'd probably include an Everest in there. So it's just how you structure it, whether you could get him to a valuation of 50 million plus if he went and won all the big races. But again, he's won the main one that has confirmed his value. So it's just, say Coolmore with the front runners, and whether it's 25 million, 30, it's a hell of a lot of money on for those owners that sort of spent $270,000 in January last year. They've, all roll the dice syndicate members, and will be cashed right up and, probably reinvest and had a ride of their life winning a Golden Slipper and what's to come.
Yeah, it's been a great ride for them. I guess something else to send the scales in from a racing perspective. There's an article on the Straight Today written by Warwick Barr about the high cost of racing at the moment, and particularly the cost of transport. Obviously, the fuel, the petrol price and the diesel price is something that we've discussed a few times. Yeah, it obviously has a material effect on, how much it costs for trainers to do business. Warwick's article's a really interesting one. I urge you to check it out, talking about Queensland trainers, particularly that travel a lot of distances. One trainer who spoke to, and I think she travels from Emerald to Townsville, and it's probably going to cost her $1,300 return in terms of fuel just for that trip. I mean, that's quite extraordinary when you think about that. There has to be a knock-on effect to the racing industry of all this, doesn't there? Feed goes up, all the things go up, all the transportation, all those things, with where things sit at the moment. Unless we see a return to, petrol prices and fuel prices from earlier this year, it's hard to see how that's not going to have a significant effect, especially at the lower end for those that work at small margins.
For sure. It should be interesting whether, trainers of all sizes tend to travel a long way now to find the right races. Whether some of those trainers, I'm sure the bigger stables that have got the owners will be prepared to probably pass that cost on or absorb some of it. Whether they still travel as far, if you're going from Cranbourne to Wodonga or, Sydney to Wagga to find the right race and things like that, and go, it's not whether. And then the picnic scene, and which, I love, whether some of those trainers going a long way to race horses for not a hell of a lot of prize money, particularly if you can't win a race that weekend and doesn't go your way. It's an expensive, hobby or, business model. So, yeah, it has to be a knock-on effect. It's only natural.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Warwick pointed out that there was a country show in Queensland's been called off because of the cost of these things, and it's only going to be affecting those things across that. Talking about Michael Costa, he had headed back home from Dubai after, I think, 4 successful years there. He's built quite a formidable record. Look, he says he's returning home. Basically, it's time. He's sort of had his time there. Obviously, there's a fair bit going on in the region. I'm sure that hasn't helped the situation, but in terms of him, but I'm sure it's probably made the decision more clear in his mind. But it'd be really interesting to see how he goes in Queensland, because I think there's an opportunity for us. Yeah, him to sort of, I guess, take that experience and that success and really build on it from a new base at the Gold Coast.
Well, he'd already built a successful stable on the Gold Coast and was really pushing his way up the ranks, in probably the top 5 and, in southeast Queensland. But he'll come back, bigger, and it'll take him a while to build that up from scratch. But I think a lot more owners will probably, bigger and breeders and things like that will probably recognise what he's achieved. He did go to a stable in Dubai that, to be fair, hadn't had a lot of success the previous few years, and he, I think he won the premiership one year. So he can certainly train. In my dealings with him from a media perspective, he's exceptional to deal with, and can, for family reasons, he's got 4 young children. They wanted to move home, and I can understand that. And as you say, the conflict in the Middle East would only, add to that reasoning or justification. So I know he's done very well over there, and hopefully I'm sure he's certainly set his family up financially as well to have a decent crack back here with a, nice lifestyle.
The last topic in the racing space, Tim, is probably one of a bugbear in mine, so I'll tee off on this one. The Melbourne Cup The VRC announced this week that the Prix de Courcouronnes will now be a ballot-free race for the Melbourne Cup, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. I think it's, I kind of think the concept of ballot-free races do have some challenges. I wonder though, Tim, there's now 11 races which are ballot-free for the Melbourne Cup. What does that do to the Melbourne Cup when you're effectively handing out 11 free tickets? Does it change the nature of the race? And I saw suggestions in other press, and I'm not going to go into what they said, but that, all the cups around Australia, the Sydney Cup, Brisbane Cup, Adelaide Cup, Hobart Cup, whatever else, should be ballot-free as well. Why the hell would you have a handicap? Like, it completely ruins the concept of a handicap, which is what made the Melbourne Cup an enduring race. From my idea, the golden ticket concept, I don't mind it where the races are closer to the Melbourne Cup, but when you've got a race like the Roy Higgins on Saturday, and it's been a golden ticket race for 3 years, none of the horses that have won that race have actually gone into the Melbourne Cup, because it's a long time, a lot can happen between here and there. But also, it's built its reputation on being a good enough horse to get in the race, but not a good enough horse to be having too much weight. So it's sort of balancing those things out. I feel from my perspective, I think that there is probably a balance there where you want to promote the race and have tickets into the race and whatever else. I get why you're doing that, but I wonder if in the end you're ruining the sort of, what's the best way to put it? You're ruining the sort of, the thing that makes the race special, which it is a handicap. I know it's not an easy thing for the broader public to understand, but I wonder if you get, you want horses in form getting into the race, and that's a key part. So you don't want horses that 6 months ago might have won a race that are getting into the race. I have problems with it. I think I can see why the VRC are doing it, so I'm not criticising them for doing it, but I think it changes the nature of the race. I don't know if you've got an opinion on it, Tim, but that's sort of my view, and it's a bit of a bugbear for me.
If you're good enough to get in the race, you get in the race. It's a 24-horse field. The argument that it'll help turnover and things like that, I certainly from a cup point of view, as we know, it's the biggest betting race in the country anyway by a country mile, but having guaranteed 500 to 1 chances in the race isn't going to help turnover, because they got no hope. And no disrespect to the Adelaide Cup winner this year, American Wolf, looks like a genuine stayer, but
if he's good enough, he'll get the race anyway, doesn't he?
Exactly right. So I don't think he needs his ballot to weigh in. And I'm a bit ambivalent to the whole thing. I sort of look at the race when it sort of comes around. But anyway, not a huge issue, but that Prix Courcouronnes is sort of, it can be an okay lead in. So neither here nor there for me.
Yeah. On wagering now, and an article this week, which I'm busy with all week on the wagering yard, but Tabcorp having it was interesting to see the comments made by Gillon McLaughlin, the Tabcorp CEO, at last month's Asian Racing Conference in Riyadh, and where he was talking about the challenges of the past of Tabcorp and how in a period between 2018 and 2024, Tabcorp's lost half of their market share. So they went from having 60% market share to 30% market share. It's quite extraordinary to actually see that written. We knew that sort of had happened, but we hadn't really seen it put in such stark terms. And he actually had a reasonable, what's the best way to put it? He had a reasonable crack at what Tabcorp had done. Now, given he wasn't in charge then, it's easy for him to have a bit of a crack at that. But it changed the market. Sportsbet got themselves in a position where they're now the dominant player. They're probably about 45-46% of the market. Tabcorp, from an overall point of view, about 30%, and then beyond that, you've got Entain and others. But it was just an interesting article, and I guess it's probably, for me, it sort of speaks to how things have changed in the last 10 years. A lot's changed in the wagering landscape, and it's continuing to change. And on top of that, we had the pandemic wagering boom, where there was enormous boost in wagering because there was nothing else to do besides bet on racehorses, to be perfectly honest, for a lot of people for a long time. That sort of artificially inflated the market, but also the profile or prominence of the market. Advertising was everywhere. And then we had a parliamentary inquiry. And then we had the You Win Some, You Lose More report come out, which 1,000 days ago this week was released, and the federal government still haven't done anything with it. So that was for me, it's sort of interesting about how all those things have affected the Australian wagering industry. And if you sort of sit there now and go, let's set this forward and go, what does it look like going forward? Tabcorp are trying to get back to retail. You've got Sportsbet trying to pretty much consolidate. You've got Entain's kind of in a holding pattern, trying to work out where they sit. You've got some others trying to grow it. It'd be really interesting to see where it's at in 4 or 5 years' time, whether it's going to be generally disrupted as it was in that period we saw over the pandemic. So anyway, just an interesting point. Have a read of that if you're interested in that stuff. But I think from a wagering perspective, anything up as a wagering perspective affects racing and bloodstock as well, and always worth a read. Tim, anything else from you in the wagering space you sort of wanted to point out?
Oh, no, just on the pandemic. Tab, it's easy for Gil to pot his predecessor. It's, good on him. But they were the most affected by the, given the retail monopoly was all shut and Sportsbet was everywhere. Everyone signed up and whatever. So there was other reasons for that loss of market share, and I just want to put on the record as well, after talking to John Messara, that interview, you did say that the straight, including myself, would go to the Breeders' Cup next year. So I just wanted to put that on record as well, Brent.
Yeah, you're riding Autumn Glow, but might be riding 40 kilos over, so she might struggle. But look, I'm happy to make promises that are 18 months in advance, because I know you'll probably forget by then anyway, so we'll work that out from then. All right, thanks for joining us on Straight Talk, brought to you by our terrific sponsors, Inglis and Darley. Don't forget to give us a rating whenever you're listening to us. Send an email at editor@thestraight.com.au if you've got any ideas. Thanks for your time. We'll talk to you again on Monday night when we'll have a review of the Inglis Easter Yearling Sale. Thanks for your time.